that's why I'm hopeful, because I think the people that are out there that believe the same way that you and I do, Nick, they're getting that confidence more and more. Their ability to lead, their ability to gather and to do good for society is growing. And I think the pendulum swung. I think people saw what this other life could look like. I think COVID was an eye opener of like, hey, this might seem like a great idea. None of us have to do shit. And we can sit in our houses all day and just allow, everything to be done for us and money to be given to us. But then we saw how miserable everybody was becoming, and the people that take action. And that's where I get hopeful. And so for me, I love the way you articulated that, because we've kind of had this pendulum swing. I feel like people are waking up because of, access to podcasts like yours. And, Joe Rogan always says, he goes, you want to help the country, we need to have less losers. It's what he's speaking to. Less people in group one, and less people in group two.
We have a video that's about to go out. I did two videos. I did one on everything, things daughters need to hear from their fathers. And then I did another one on things sons need to hear from their fathers. And it just is kind of like a preview, because it's not out yet, so your audience will see it first. The first one was, what do sons need to hear from their dads? Don't be a wuss, right? and I explained, I said, look, this is not me being a jerk, right? This is the idea that, I love my son. I care about my son. I want my son to be capable and confident in what he can do. And part of that is rooted in this whole idea of be a man. What does it mean to be a man? Well, I can tell you right now, I can talk to you. I can go out there and grab pretty much any guy I know and say, when I say be a man, what do you mean? And it's always going to be some version of suck it up and do your job, right? Keep your word, fulfill your responsibilities. That's what it means. It means that despite the pain involved, despite the discomfort involved, you persevere through it, because that's what a man does. Now, if you're not willing to do that, or to your point, we live in a society that's become so coddled, right? And so prosperous to a degree that it's actually just making people, again, lazy and lethargic. If you're never given challenges, intellectual ones, emotional ones, physical ones, if you're never given challenges to overcome as a kid, if it's all just sitting there and playing video games and eating Doritos, well, then we shouldn't be surprised when that kid gets a little bit older and is not ready for any of the real challenges of life. We shouldn't be surprised when that kid decides to take the easy route of, oh, okay, I guess I'll just live off of assistance, or I guess I'll just do the bare minimum in order to keep the dopamine hits going with video games and porn, right? But it's one of the reasons why, as fathers, as men that are a little bit older, that have been down the road a little bit, it's our job to come alongside and mentor younger men and say, no, you have to struggle. There's no getting around it. You have to struggle, because as I've told my son, like, as your father, I can love you unconditionally. Respect has to be earned. And my job is to show you how to earn it and help you become capable of earning it. Because one thing that is very profound about men is, for men, love without respect feels like pity. And we don't want to be pitied, right?
That's good. Yeah.
But respect has to be earned based off of, again, something you've done, a capability that you possess, something that you have honed and refined, again, for service to yourself and service to others. And so equipping young men to be able to earn that respect in difficult circumstances breeds that sort of confidence and a desire for it. Because, again, if we leave them to do nothing but the quest for pleasure, we're in a lot of trouble. If we leave them with nothing for the quest for power, we're in a lot of trouble. But if we can present noble challenges where they can earn respect, they will continue to seek out those noble challenges. And that's part of our job.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love that. So love without respect feels like pity. That's going to be blasted everywhere. That's brilliant, man. Because it's true, and nobody wants to feel that. When you're getting that, right? And as a man, you said it best, is like, respect has to be earned. You can't just pass that out. As soon as you walk into a room, based upon the people that are, who you respect and who you don't. And it's always based on, do they show up and do the damn thing? Are they respectable people? Are they living in a way that demands that respect? And the even bigger deal is, if you're a man worth respecting, when nobody's there and nobody's paying attention, if you've taken the easy routes, or you've let yourself fall short of where you should be or could be. And so what about the advice to the daughters? I'd love to hear a preview of that as well. That was brilliant.
Oh gosh. Yeah. One of the first videos that we did on Instagram that went out was all talking about 3 things I learned raising daughters. And I talked about this experience I had when I had a little girl, and I went up to a buddy of mine in SF, who was one of the biggest man whores you've ever met. I mean, this guy could go out to the bar, come home, and then go right back out to the bar. Like I mean, it was pretty bad. And I remember asking him once, I'm like, how do I protect my daughter from a guy like you? And he's a good sport. He's like, oh, that's a great question. And he said, he goes, tell your daughter you love her. And it was, tell your daughter you love her, because if you don't, somebody who doesn't will, and they'll believe him. And man, that just hit me, man. Even saying it right now, it just hits me. My oldest daughter is 21, just got married to a great guy. My youngest daughter is 16. But it was this whole idea of fostering this relationship with your daughter so that she can spot the difference between the genuine article and the counterfeit. Right? It's love is something where somebody truly cares about you. It can be sacrificial in nature. It listens, it's patient, right? All the characteristics within scripture about like what love is. It's patient, it's kind, it's long enduring, long suffering. And I wanted to be able to try to emulate that for my daughters, so that if anybody ever came around and I wasn't there to intervene, they would know the genuine article from the counterfeit. But you can't, that as a father, you can't outsource that. You're either going to do it or you're not. And, that's, so a lot of the things I talked about in the video were things that fathers need to do for their daughters. And all of it's in there, and none of it's like some sort of like profound thing that hasn't been discussed before. But I will tell you one of the things that I brought up, and I tried to word it in a way that, it might connect with people, because as men, especially when we have kids and especially when they're little, right? We know we got to be around, we know we got to do stuff, but we also got to work. We also got to provide, we got to protect, we got to do all this thing. And besides, they don't really know. Right. And, I was telling somebody how important it was to spend that time because they remember it. And the question was, well, are they really remembering like what you did when they were 2 or 3? I said at 3 or at 5, they remember what you did at 3. At 8, they remember what you did at 5. At 12, they remember what you did at 8. I said, and when you get into those years where you are the most terrified because it's the transitioning from your little girl into a young woman into a woman, and you still want to be someone that she goes to for advice, you're still someone that she wants to go to be able to spill her heart, to be able to tell you things, maybe sometimes things you don't want to hear, but she still sees you as a safe place to get wise counsel from someone she loves. You better have put in that work when she was little, because if you didn't include them when they were little, don't expect them to include you when they're older.
Yeah, I love the way that you said that, because it might seem like it doesn't have any value at 3 years old, but there's an energy that a kid feels from somebody that they feel safe with, right? That's somebody that they know that they can count on, somebody that's been there for them, and it's their friend, that's their advocate. And that extends every single year. And so, yeah, no, when I was, doing a lot of dating, and you would meet so many different girls or women, and based on how their father was, it was almost 100% accurate. I could tell how that woman was going to expect to be treated or expect to act on the date. And it was without fail, the dads that were engaged, the dads that just cared, they weren't bullies, but they cared. And you simply cared more about their daughter, knowing how much this man cared for them and showed up for them. It was very visible that this man had this deep love, and you just wanted to make sure that they felt that from you as well. And so I think that is probably the most important thing a father can do is, tell me what you think of this. I've had this theory too, that is like, I think for young men, one of the most powerful things you can do as a dad is be passionately living your own life. Because I think a lot of times parents give advice to their kids, but they're miserable in their own life. They've already given up on their dreams. They've given up on, the things that mattered to them. So their kids are like, well, I don't want to be like my dad. And so that's one of the things with my coaching program. I try to get these men to really live passionate lives, to be able to put themselves in uncomfortable situations. And, we did it kind of sounds dumb, but we did a demolition derby this last weekend, just threw it together with my group. And we had 7 guys, and one of the guys' wives joined. She bought one of the cars, and she actually ended up winning.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And the guy made this post. She jumped on the car after, and she's holding an American flag, and her daughter's up there with him. And I get a little emotional, but he made a post about it. The dad, he said, this is one of the best days of my life to watch my wife push through her fear of doing this, but more importantly, for my daughter to see her mom doing that. Oh yeah. And I was like, damn, man, like it's everything.
And that's the good stuff, man. That's the good stuff. Well, and that's the thing too. Like I look at what's going on with our country. I look at what's going on with families, and I look at the narrative that young men are being fed. And it hit me one day, and in a way I didn't anticipate. because I was listening to a convicted child predator explain who he targeted. And they're asking him all these questions. And he says, oh, well, more than the child, more than the thing I would look at is the father. He goes, if the father was around and the father was present and the father was, I stayed away, but the father wasn't there. That became a target. And I remember thinking, we have a huge problem with this across the world, but in our country right now specifically, we have a huge problem with this abuse of the young. And it's not always, it doesn't always take the form of a child predator. Sometimes it takes a far more covert form. But it was like, at a time when this guy is being honest about what he did, what he looked for a soft target, is the same time where we're telling young men that you're the problem and you shouldn't be violent and you shouldn't be capable and you should be weak and you should be docile and you should be subservient. Are they telling them that because it's true, or are they telling them that because they know they're the greatest threat on this planet to anybody hurting a child, hurting a family? And ultimately, that's the building block of society. It's not who's president. It's not who's the Speaker of the House. Those might be important. But society is built on families, and families are protected by men who show up. And I just think more than ever, it's time for, and I think young men are starting to realize this again, but they're looking for direction. What does it mean to show up, to do that effectively? Because and we've done, and keep in mind, society's done this to women as well. Mm-hmm. They have totally, women are buying into this idea that you don't need men are the enemy. You don't need to be a mother. You don't need to be a wife. That's all crap. And coincidentally enough, the women who buy into that, statistically speaking, suffer from more mental health issues than any other woman.
Yeah.
And any other type of woman within our society. So nobody is benefiting from this narrative. But men, I think young men are really standing up and saying, I'm not buying into this. I'm not buying into this.